This is what he was searching. This individual was sexually motivated. I don't care what Thompson said.
That's Kaylee Goncalves' father, Steve, opening up about what he believes the motive was behind the murder of his daughter and 3 other University of Idaho students. And he's revealing new details about what he said happened to Kaylee.
There was some damage around her mouth right here, like somebody had pressed in and tried to keep her quiet.
Welcome to Crime Fix. I'm Angenette Levy. For more than 2 years, Kaylee Goncalves' family has demanded answers about their daughter's murder. They've wanted to know why she was killed and how. And now that Bryan Kohberger has admitted to the crimes and the sweeping gag order has been lifted, Steve Goncalves says he still doesn't know the answers to the questions he's wanted answered for so very long. And he's still searching for those answers and for information. Steve Goncalves is speaking out after the judge lifted the gag order, and he's offering some harsh words for the prosecutor. He's also offering some information about what he believes the motive may have been behind the murders and some things that happened to Kaylee. I'll get to that very shortly. Now, in less than a week, Bryan Kohberger will be formally sentenced to 4 consecutive life sentences for the murders of those 4 University of Idaho students. For more than 2 years, Kohberger, a former PhD student in criminology at Washington State University in Pullman, Washington, he's maintained his innocence until now. He said he didn't murder Maddie Mogen, Kaylee Goncalves, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin at that home on King Road in the early morning hours of November 13th, 2022. It appeared he might actually claim at trial that the K-bar knife sheath containing his DNA found next to Maddie's body was planted. But then just weeks before jury selection was slated to begin in his death penalty trial, a bombshell development. Kohberger had asked for a plea deal to spare his life. He would admit to the brutal crimes he denied for so long. What suddenly changed, other than he was running out of time? The judge wasn't giving him the delay that he wanted, and it didn't really appear that he had much of a defense, since he couldn't point the finger at other suspects, and he certainly had no alibi. We really don't know what changed with Bryan Kohberger, but he finally admitted to these murders.
Did you, on November 13th, 2022, in Latah County, state of Idaho, kill and murder Madison Mogen, a human being?
Yes.
And did you do that willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, and with premeditation and malice of forethought?
Yes.
Did you, on or about that same date in Moscow, Idaho, kill and murder Kaylee Goncalves, a human being?
Yes.
And did you do that willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, and with premeditation and malice of forethought?
Yes.
And did you, on that same date in Moscow, Idaho, kill and murder Xana Kernodle, a human being?
Yes.
And did you do that willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, with premeditation and malice of forethought?
Yes.
And then on or about November 13th, 2022, again in Latah County, Idaho, did you kill and murder Ethan Chapin, a human being?
Yes.
Did you do that willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, with premeditation and malice of forethought?
Yes.
The facts, as explained by Prosecutor Bill Thompson in court, are haunting and chilling. It sounds like something out of a horror movie. And for nearly 3 years, the victims' families have been living in a horror movie. Here's Prosecutor Thompson reciting some of the facts of the case.
The defendant entered the residence of 1122 through the kitchen sliding door on the back side of the residence, which is the side of the residence that would face the area above where the defendant's car was parked. Defendant entered the residence, went to the 3rd floor, and with a knife, killed Madison Mogen and Kaylee Goncalves. The defendant, as he left that room, for whatever reason, ended up leaving, or the sheath for a K-bar knife was left on the bed next to Madison Mogen's body. And I can jump ahead. That sheath was tested by the Idaho State Police Forensic Lab, and single source male DNA was found on the snap of that sheath. as well as blood from both Kaylee and Madison and other trace evidence. But it's important to note single source male DNA was on the snap of that sheath.
What Thompson describes is absolutely terrifying. It was a typical Saturday night, Sunday morning in a college house, and it turned into a nightmare because of one man who destroyed lives in a matter of minutes.
The state's evidence would show that Xana Kanotal was still awake at this time. In fact, had taken a DoorDash order not long before this started. Her room was not on the 3rd floor, it was on the 2nd floor on the west side. As the defendant was either coming down the stairs or leaving, he encountered Xana, and he ended up killing her, also with a large knife. Ethan Chapin, Xana's boyfriend, was asleep in their bedroom, in her bedroom, and the defendant killed him as well with a large fixed blade knife. Each victim suffered multiple wounds. I will state for the record that there is no evidence there was any sexual component or sexual assault on any of the victims. I want to make that clear so there's no speculation.
Now, prosecutors and police have been very, very clear about the fact that there was no evidence of a sexual assault or sexual trauma on any of the victims, but that doesn't mean that this wasn't a sexually motivated crime. I've been saying for a very long time that this appeared to be a sexually motivated crime. Bryan Kohberger may not have had the chance to commit a sexual assault because he was likely interrupted, his plan thwarted because he went to Maddie Mogen's bedroom and she wasn't alone. Her best friend, Kaylee Goncalves, was in the bed with her. That was likely not part of Bryan Kohberger's plan. And let's say there was no plan for a sexual assault. Experts will tell you that some perpetrators can be aroused by the act of killing. And it's really difficult to wrap your mind around that fact, but it's something, sadly, that can happen with these people. And remember that Dateline special that aired so much evidence in May, evidence that no one had ever seen before publicly? That special included information that Bryan Kohberger had a lot of searches for pornography about girls who were drunk and passed out. Dateline reported Kohberger's porn searches included forced sex with girls who were sleeping, breaking into someone's house in the middle of the night, armed with a knife. Certainly seems like a sexually motivated crime when you know about those Google searches for pornography. And remember, he had also searched for Ted Bundy, the notorious serial killer who lived in Washington state at one time. Bundy raped and murdered many, many women. Now, Steve Goncalves, Kaylee's father, is talking about the possible motive in an interview with Ashley Banfield on her podcast, Drop Dead Serious. He says, despite that gag order being lifted, they still don't have any information about what happened to Kaylee as they prepare for victim impact statements.
We requested for basically Kaylee, what happened to Kaylee. So I know her sisters want to do a victim statement and address the exacts, some of the things that happened to her. And they basically wouldn't share any information with us on, what happened to her. So I'm pretty used to how ridiculous, not just a gag order, but sealing something that has nothing to do with the victim's rights. It's all about, hate to say it, but it is a lot to do with the media and people being put on cameras and not knowing what to say, or things coming out that they didn't mean to say, or just didn't have a good explanation of what was going on. So they wrap this seal thing around trying to pretend like they're, trying to protect people and doing all that. But they gave out people's initials at the very beginning. So it's just a dog and pony show that we're supposed to pretend like, like there's top secret information inside these docs. It's pretty gross, and we're fed up with it, and we're glad that it's over. And we just, you only got one time to be able to be a victim's advocate and say what you need to say and to address the courtroom and everyone in Idaho. And they're not gonna let us know exactly what happened. So it's just terrible. You're gonna go in there, we're gonna make statements, and we're like, we don't want to say anything inaccurate. We want to make sure everything we say is exactly truthful. And it's one of those times where they could bend the rules, but they don't.
Now, the Goncalveses appear to have had a very contentious relationship with members of law enforcement from the beginning of the case when they tried to get information and couldn't. And despite that gag order being lifted, they say they still can't get information.
There's no discussion of that. We just Shannon just sent him an email and just said, "Are you really going to make my clients go through 3 different agencies to get this information that they want to see? Like go through Freedom of Information Acts for the state of Idaho, for the county of Latah, and then there's federal ones as well. There's even other states. So it's like they could make it happen, but clearly the willpower isn't there. I don't think they really want anyone talking to the media and questioning. Remember these people said that it was a crime of passion, it was targeted, and it was an isolated event. All this language, and then they even said you're gonna have to trust us. You're just gonna have to wait and trust us. And now we've waited, and it's like, no, no, no. Well, there was no connection whatsoever that we could establish. So how do you get isolated? How do you get targeted? So I think it's more about covering up some of the mistakes that they made. They don't want to talk about destroying the crime scene and how questionable that was. So they just say, well, we're gagged. And now that the gag's over, you guys aren't going to know exactly what we were talking about during the last 2.5 years.
Steve Goncalves certainly believes that the murders were sexually motivated from what he's learned about Bryan Kohberger's Google searches.
Most of the information we found out were just people calling up. I've had other officers call us up and just say, I don't know what just happened in the court today, but I don't support it. People so angry at what was happening in that courtroom that they would literally pick up their phone and call us and say, this is what's on Bryan's phone. This is what he was searching. This individual was sexually motivated. I don't care what Thompson said. They've got a plan for him. They've got a job role for that man. And it's not every day that you get somebody who wants to be a police officer, is dying to be a police officer, is literally talking to them every single day about how he was going to be a police officer. It's not every day you get a master's degree in criminology that is going to go into prison, and they're going to leverage that. That's what they're interested in. They're not interested in him being locked up in 23 hours of solitaire where he's not going to be able to have any influence. They want him to go in there and actually have influence and work with them.
Goncalves also discussed information that he learned about injuries that Kaylee suffered. We knew that she and the other victims died from stab wounds, but there was more, according to Goncalves. He said early in the investigation that he had been told that Kaylee's wounds differed from Maddie's, that Kaylee's were more severe. Goncalves then talked about Kohberger's interest in pornography.
Just weird porn fetishes, but 2 of the fetishes were in that room. Drunk, passed out girls and gagging girls. And those are 2 things that were part of that crime scene. For Thompson to say that there was no sexual assault, of course there wasn't. He didn't have enough time. Somebody came up there. But why are you defending somebody who just killed 4 people? Why are you not even making him stand in the courtroom and admit that he killed 4 people? I mean, it's upside down world sometimes when you go in those court systems and they're literally, oh, you've been so respectful. You can sit down when you plead guilty, with a yes and no answer. So we're just glad to be done with it. We're glad to move on.
When you said drunk, passed out girls, gagging girls, was there something that happened at the crime scene involving gagging that you heard?
Yeah. That's what we've heard. That's why we want to get all these facts straight. So we don't want to have a statement that isn't accurate.
Did someone with the investigation describe that Kaylee or Maddie was gagged during this horrible crime?
I was told that by somebody in I can give that out. That was Babbitt. That was Babbitt who gave that information.
What did she say?
There was some damage to her. There was some damage around her mouth, right here, like somebody had pressed in and tried to keep her quiet.
The Goncalveses have also said in the past that Kaylee had suffered head trauma. I have tried to confirm all of these details with the coroner of Latah County, Kathy Mabbitt, and she has declined to offer details. I even reached out to her in the hours after Judge Hippler lifted the gag order. And again, she said that she would not be making any public statements about the case. But if that is accurate, that Kaylee had a mark on her mouth, as if somebody had tried to keep her quiet, that would suggest that she certainly awoke or was awake after Kohberger entered that room armed with a knife. Kaylee's parents have said in the past that she fought back and likely tried to save herself and Maddie. Meanwhile, court documents have stated that Maddie Mogen, that she couldn't fight back and that she had no defensive wounds.
What's that look like for you guys? And we said, we're not in it. We're in it for the death penalty. The choice is he could be fired at or he could take a shot. Those are the two options that we would agree to. And then we did, we would have, if it would have got to negotiations, we would have negotiated a lot better than Thompson. Thompson negotiated like a 5-year-old kid. He didn't force him to say that he did it solo by himself. Didn't force him to prove that he was wearing the suit or show us where the sheath, the knife is to the sheath. There's a right way to do things, and then there's just, I want it over with because I want my summer back and I want to go retire. So that's what we got. We got a pitiful effort from an old man who's retiring and doesn't believe in the death penalty and really had no right to even be in that room. And it's a shame that we didn't have any other choices that we could have pushed for. We tried. I mean, I tried to even hire a prosecutor. I would have paid to have my daughter in a separate case with our own prosecutor that we paid for, and not even made Idaho pay one penny. And it would have turned out differently.
It's really all too sad to contemplate that these kids were sleeping in a bedroom in a college house and their lives were just taken from them, stolen from them in a matter of minutes. Now we will possibly learn some more information. The city of Moscow is going to be releasing documents on its website. We will be keeping an eye on all of that to bring you more information, and we will be in Boise for that sentencing of Bryan Kohberger next week, so stay tuned. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode of Crime Fix. I'm Angenette Levy. I'll see you back here next time.